Dear Venerable Bhante, dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, Dhamma friends, today also we are going to take time for the talk. May everyone settle down for the talk and give the consent with 3 times, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Yo bhante viditvana majje manta nalippati. Tang brumi Maha purisoti yoda sibbani macca gati. Dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, Dhamma friends, we are in the series of Dhamma talk based upon the feelings. The main thing Venerable Sariputta emphasizes to penetrate into that and to thoroughly understand about these 3 kinds of feelings. The basic quotation we took it from the Dasuttara Sutta in the long discourses, and for the last few days we took some other supportive suttas from the Majjhima Nikaya. Today also we are going to take such another one that is from Anguttara Nikaya. This particular sutta or this particular stanza we quoted from the Majjhima Sutta. It is very interesting to see during the time of the Buddha, it has been a kind of a very popular frame to understand the phenomena. That is why this particular stanza came into being, whereby Tissametteya, and the kind of a seeker, come to the Buddha and pose a question. According to the question and answer session, this the conclusive answer the Buddha presented. It is giving a kind of a tool, kind of a framework to see things as they are, or rather go into the deep penetration into the phenomena, or the deep penetration into the matter. So if we are to get the literal translation of this stanza, yo ubhante viditvana, one has to understand 2 extremes, 2 ends. It's a very, very interesting thing and very profound thing, very important thing. The very first discourse the Buddha delivered after his enlightenment was that Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So also he start with understanding these 2 extremes. Buddha is relating his own personal experience. That is how the revelation of the middle path happened. So therefore, ubhante viditvana. So just not only just understanding, one has to go penetrate into 2 extremes or 2 ends. Majje mantana lippati. More and more you go deep and deep into this, deep and deep understanding into these 2 extremes, you find there's a gray area, it's a middle area, and that is the part we missing unless otherwise we are penetrating. And in the process of understanding these 2 extremes or 2 ends, the basic barrier is we have likings and dislikings. One of the extremes may be for our desire, and the other, if that is the case, other may be for the hate. In this subject that we have taken as feelings, whenever the feeling is pleasurable, we have the desire, the pleasure principle, and as a result of that, the painful feeling is always with the hate or dislike. So that is the point, that's one of the point one must know in the outset. Not only the mere superficial value, superficial characteristics of the pleasurable feeling or the painful feeling, your mindset, and that is not happening intentionally by your volitional activity, but it is naturally happening. But you are the person immediately, diligently, vigilantly, without delay, to understand, to see through when and where the pleasurable feeling happen. There's a desire, liking. And in the same token, when and where the painful feeling happens, the dislike happens. So the day you familiar with that, or thorough with that, you are ready to see through with that, it's a one way of understanding two extremes. Yet another aspect what we can add to this observation is, when and where you to understand that the beginning, the middle and the end of the pleasurable feeling, the beginning, the middle and the end of the painful feeling, that's also yet another aspect of thorough understanding. So likewise, when we are practicing with under the light of mindfulness or with the help of mindfulness, whenever this kind of feeling going to happen, we are not carried away, we are not let the likings and dislike to carry away, take we for a ride. Instead, understand not only the pleasurable feeling, but it's the liking aspect. And usually what we do is just see the tip of the iceberg without seeing the very beginning of the pleasurable feeling and the very end, or not consistent enough to see the end of the pleasurable feeling. So that is how we must take it as an object and be thorough. This may be somewhat easier when compared with the painful feeling, because painful feeling we never ready to consider even as an object. It's a kind of something we avoid, so therefore irritation and the dislike can happen. So therefore, to see the beginning of a painful feeling is a kind of a meditative aspect or religious aspect. It may not be in our day-to-day timetable. So therefore, when and where the painful feeling to arise, if you are to see the beginning of it, you must be diligent. If you are negligent, you may see only the already arisen unpleasant feeling, painful feeling. By the time you are short-tempered and you are worked up with, carried away maybe for a ride, and therefore difficult to note the mindset, the dislike. So therefore, with the help of pleasurable feeling, you have to be thorough, you have to be diligent, and as and when it arises, how much can we go with the prepared mind, specifically for the painful feeling. So whenever it is happening, you can go into the middle part of the painful feeling. Of course, it is kind of unbearable maybe, and when we are going there, easily we tend to escape or find ways and means to avoid it rather than maintaining with that particular painful feeling. And if you are lucky enough, and if you are persistent enough, if the mindfulness is steadfast enough, you may one day see the peak of it and see and be thorough to see the disappearance part and the cessation part, wearing and tearing part of the painful feeling that is unbelievably pleasurable. One thing is that you have achieved something. The other thing is, by nature, usually painful feeling it gives way to the pleasure. That's the point we have been missing so far. So that by penetration, we are learning the art, how to maintain the mindfulness, persistent mindfulness, steadfast mindfulness, and keep the subject face to face and continue basically with the impermanent notion. Even though it is being labeled as painful feeling, the arising part and the persistent part will be as painful as you expect. But if you are to continue, it will change its nature and gives rise to the pleasure, and that is the point where the penetration or the steadfastness of the mindfulness is increasing. So when that to happen, you are improving the mindfulness, sharpening the mindfulness, and mindfulness as a tool, it may be increasing up to the faculty level. Otherwise, very difficult to have this consistency or steadfastness of the mindfulness. So mindfulness is now maybe improving from the four foundation of mindfulness level to mindfulness as a faculty. So that change, that evolution is something like the evolution of the painful feeling, and it is metamorphosized and change and evolve into pleasurable feeling. Not only the object, in this case that painful feeling, the observing mind or the observing mindfulness itself is evolving to the faculty level. And when you further continue, the mindfulness is going up to the power of mindfulness, sati bala, and there are some radical changes will sets in not only to your meditation but to your personality traits also, your likings and disliking also. Because at the beginning you had the general flat, irritation kind of a dislike kind of a feeling, but to continue with that particular object, that is to say with the painful feeling, ultimately to see it is evolving into simply the opposite of it, you may understand the steadfast mindfulness as a character, the continuity, that is we can call as the momentum of the mindfulness or the acceleration of the mindfulness. So that is not belongs to you. But the early part of the mindfulness, when and where, for example, the painful feeling happens, even though it is not a favorable subject, note it as pain, 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 and see it's our nature. It's an unlucky, disheartening kind of a nature. But for the sake of mindfulness, you may just keep on noting in order to develop the mindfulness. Until that you have your own part, you have your own training part, restraint. And while continuing, when you are continuing like that, sometimes you get gifts, benefits, or endowment like that, slight changes of the painful nature, And if you are really well instructed, if you have a really good interview, if you can write that in your interview report, for that, not the meditation, but your communication, your sharpness of the observation, and true to type kind of a reporting is very, very crucial. That is the most important part. So, U Pandita Sayadaw, 2 years before his passing away, he mentioned it is very difficult to expect from a beginner or a yogi to write such a precise report. So therefore, if the yogi is not reporting, if the yogi is not short to the point, if he is beating on bush, it is not the mistake of the yogi, it is not the weakness of the yogi, it is the weakness of the teacher. It is the weakness of the master. Master must find ways and means and aphorisms and trial and error and indicate what to write and what must be the sharpness of your report, not that what you think, not that what you expect out of the meditation, just write what do you experience. And for that, you must be sharp, not only in the observation, but in reporting. So these are the most important things that in a residential retreat we can expect, rather than when we are doing in a meditation in a casual basis, in the day-to-day, with the day-to-day activities and daily chorus in our day-to-day life. So these things can happen. Not, of course, it is not completely limited to the residential retreat. If you are with the quick wit and the sharpness, you may have it. But otherwise, in the first day, second day, third day, you may not be addressing, you may not be adverting, you may not be sharpening into that particular point. But when you keep on doing, not only the practice, not only the listening to the talks, but to the interviews and the discussion, that is called sakacha. And when it is happening, one day you may hit the bullseye. So that is to say, you are observing either the painful feeling or pleasurable feeling, and you manage to see it is transitional area and see going into the other side after surpassing the climax. And when it is going to the other side, the pleasurable feeling end up with the pain, and the painful feeling is end up with the pleasure. And when that happens only, your mind is ready to see the middle area, majje, that the gray area, that's the most slurry, most muddy, most clouded and puddled area. So, because of our permanent notion, we usually recognize pain as pain, and it is pleasurable, auspicious, it is me, it is my, that is what I have to give my children, that is what I have to give to my dear and near ones. So therefore we are vehemently fighting for this pleasurable feeling. So you have to imagine how much of a permanent notion you must have. But in the meditation, if you go with the open-mindedness, that is to understand the impermanent notion, impermanent nature, that is how you can see the changing, evolving to one to the other. And when it is happening, you learn the art of practicing of this impermanent notion. And there are another trap. That is to say, when and where you to see the middle area, the gray area, there is a danger of attachment to the middle part. So you are achieving, of course, your mindfulness is getting sharper, and you are entering into the new area, unknown area, new paradigm, and they are due to you, it is your own achievement. It is your own mindfulness, power of mindfulness, and mindfulness is evolving, and you are knowing all the black holes, changing transitional part. When that happens, there may be a danger that you attach into this Majje, the middle path. But the teaching, the profundity of the teaching is, even though it is your brainchild, even by something you earn, you must have the unattachment and distance observation of that. That is the same Majje Mantana Lipati. Even you discover that new area, you must not get attached into that. If that is the case, the Buddha, he says, Tambrumi Maha Purusoti. I call him a great man, a great person, because he is not so attached to his own discoveries, his brainchild, and that is how you call it, this meditation as seen through thorough understanding and profound understanding. And when that happens, so the Sibbani Machaga can understand if you are not thorough enough, if you are not steadfast enough to see these episodes one after the other, how much fabrication can take place, how much of a storytelling can take place, how much the seamstress, the stitcher, the sewing put together and fabrication happening. So that's the point where we can say fantasizing, daydreaming, mental proliferation, storytelling, everything going to take place. As far as you have a thorough understanding, see-through understanding, there is no necessity for storytelling. There is no space for fabrication. If your observation is partial, if your observation is incomplete, so much so storytelling, so much so fabrication. It's called, the Buddha used the term Sibbani. Sibbani is a seamstress. Put two things together and put a stitch and stitching. So two things are the pleasurable feeling and the painful feeling. As far as you don't know end of the pleasurable feeling and the beginning of the painful feeling, that means the Sibbani, the seamstress or the stitching nature of the desire fill the gap with mental proliferation, fill the gap with daydreaming, fantasizing, fabrication, storytelling. So that is why less and less the observation, more and more your storytelling, and more you observe right from the beginning through the middle to the end, you get spellbound and nothing to talk about. Instead you have to go deep and deep, observe, more and more you observe, your profundity of the knowledge, make it not mental proliferation, no storytelling. So this is how you go into the deep, into the meditation. It may be deepening of your understanding about the feeling. It may be a deepening into your mindfulness or maturing the mindfulness up to the power of mindfulness. And still it may be going deep into your consciousness also. So when the Buddha explained this or preach this particular formula after the question of Venerable Tissa, during the time of the Buddha, in the contemporary time itself, one day some elderly monks got together after the meal, and one monk presented this stanza as the topic for the discussion. It is interesting enough. there are 6 monks giving 6 interpretations. What are the 2 ends, and what is the middle, and who is this seamstress? That means this particular frame, this particular way of handling, not only applicable to the feelings, all the other, there are some other ways and means, and luckily enough, after they have discussed the minutes and the progress report, they gave it to the Buddha. And then the Buddha give his comments. He says all the 6 ways each and every elder monk presented is correct. And but under the Venerable Tissametteya's question, the Buddha says, this is what I mean, but there may be a lot of other interpretations. So in our meditation, we can say, we can understand the first interpretation in this later discussion. One particular monk says, 2 ends are the touching point, the touch of the object, and the beginning of the touch is the other end. If we take the breath as a precursor, as a preparation for this feeling, it says soon you get the touch of the breath. That is one end. So that is the starting point. And when and where you familiarize it, in our meditative jargon, we can say, we are familiar with each and every in-breath. We are familiar with each and every out-breath. So that is how, when you keep on practicing, when you keep on striving, you come to a point where you are face to face with the breath, avenued with the breath, and touch with the breath. That means you understand the in-breath, out-breath, that is one end. And then when and where you get the interviews and the instructions and furtherance, it says, when and where you become skillful to get each and every in-breath and out-breath touch to face with, now try to see the beginning of the in-breath. So that is how your mindfulness is sharpening. One day, due to this your diligence, that is the opposite of negligence, you are not only see already arisen in-breath, you see how it sets in and develop up to this gushing, rushing air column in your nostril. If I am to cite an example, once you see the sun on the sky, if you are inquisitive or inquiring the relationship with the sun and the earth, one may ask you to see, go to the eastern shore or climb a mountain and see the eastern sky before the sunrise. And it's utter darkness. So you have to go prepared and wait. And you can't see the sunrise, instead you can see the dawn. The light, white aura or the light perception appear in the eastern. So that is a precursor. That's a forerunner. And seeing that, after 30 minutes of the panoramic drama, scenic drama, the sun rises, and there it is very, very beautiful and very, very mild in the brightness. And slowly, slowly it peeps in, and then when it is coming up to the sky, it becomes very harsh. And morning when you are observing the sun, you may be waiting to see the sunrise. But during the daytime, you will wear sunglasses not to see that bloody thing. And it will create ozone, and you will be exposed, and you will get the sun scorch, skin damages. But in the morning, it's a completely different aesthetic thing. So whenever we are talking about the sun, if you have seen only a recent sun, it's a different story. Imagine the day you go and see the dawn and a rising sun, and it's a different story. It's somewhat aesthetic, it's somewhat very appealing. So likewise, the day you see the beginning of the phenomena, it has so much of difference from the already arisen phenomena and the rising part of the phenomena. So that make a big change. That is we call penetration. That's we call seeing through. You are not passing your judgment or inference about the sun only by looking at the recent sun. Instead, you keep on doing feasibility study to see the rising sun or see the dawn, and then if you are going to make any kind of inference or decision, it is lasting than your partial observation of the already arisen sun. So that is how the very first monk interpret the passa eko anto, passa samudayo eko anto. The touch of the breath at your end of the nostril or tip of your upper lip is the starting point. Itself is a challenge. Because many people complain when they come to the meditation, they are worried and discouraged and they leave the center telling that I can't get the touch of the breath. Here not only the touch of the breath, whatever may be the touch, we take the breath as an example, or we can take the in-breath as an example, or out-breath as an example, or rising and falling, or whatever the touch it is happening. So it is the starting point. And then onward, it is going to the beginning to see the source. So this is parallel in the diagnostic aspect of the disease as well as the understanding this sansaric suffering disease also. In a disease also, whenever you have an epidemic situation in a country, it is too late. Then the people are succumb to that situation, and an individual person can't make any kind of a contributive suggestion or action. Then the health ministry, they have to understand this epidemic, and what they do is, after observing the already sick people and treating to their symptoms, ask and make an announcement to the country telling that there is an epidemic situation. These are the symptoms. Don't wait till symptoms become aggravated, serious. As soon as you see the early signs, early symptoms, please come and report. Then there is a hope. So that is how the country, the citizens have to respond. And when it is happening, the medical research people, they take the sample from the already serious patients, and when and where the people with early signs going to report, take the samples. And they do culturing to understand the root cause. Because once you being attacked with the pathogenic germ, your body immunity goes down, so there are a lot of other secondary infections can take place. So with the person with serious sickness or symptoms, the research person cannot understand the root cause. And if you are a beginner with early signs, the situation is less and less complicated. So that is how they go culturing again and again and try to understand the root cause. To understand the root cause, it is a regression. It is a reductionist kind of situation. You have to go back to the source. This is very well fit with the term Yoniso Manasikara. Yoniso Manasikara means when and where touch happens or contact happens, don't rush to find the answer for that. That is, don't rush only to treat the symptoms. Just see and have a patient approach to see it's the early signs, the root cause. So when it is happening, you can see uninstructed person get agitated and short-tempered, they become panic, and they're rushing for a treatment to the symptoms. But instead, the research people, medical MRI people, medical research institute people has to see the root cause when it is happening. It is isolation, delimitation, or paricheda jnana, the understanding and elimination of the particular germ is a very, very technical thing. He must not be a sick person. He must be a healthy person and observe it, and then only one day they will catch all the root cause. Then only they can for sure say, this is the germ, this is the bacteria, this is the antibacteria. You take it, then you are sure. In the first place, you are not being attacked by this epidemic, and then your health or your immunity will be intact. So, when you are, before making the declaration, they have to do research and apply this isolated bacteria into a new tissues and see whether it is going to give the same symptoms. This is called Koch's postulation. 3 times they have to do again and again, apply this isolated bacteria or a germ to a healthy person or healthy animal or healthy tissue and see whether it is going to take the same symptoms like the epidemic. Then only they can make a scientific conclusion or declaration. This is what the Buddha did for us. He not only by mere superficial understanding, he declared, he says, I have done so much of repetitive way, it is called search and research, which is called noble quest. So therefore we are better off. Not only he found the truth, he reapplied again and researched, and after that only he presented this thesis. So therefore the Buddha, when compared with the other religious masters, not only he made use the system approach, here the reductionism also part and parcel of your philosophy. Usually religion is dealing with the system approach, the totality. And they try to find a cause. And they come out with the omnipotent God or the root cause, the original creator and all the kind of thing. But the Buddha, he not only that, he reduced, and it's called Vibhajyavada. It's analytical, reduced to the germ, reduced to the early symptoms. Not only look at this, the already arisen sun, go and see the dawn, the rising sun, sunrise. And then only he can make a declaration. So once you see the touch, the contact, or the passa, the touch of your breath, you have to work backward to see where does it comes from and what is the source of it. And there you can see it is when it is starting, it's completely different phenomena, and then slowly gather the momentum, and ultimately it becomes a gushing air through your nostrils. So this is the point the senses, your sensitivity and your gross touch can feel it. But when the mindfulness becomes sharper, that's by way of regression, you go to the very early part of your arising sensation of the breath, mindfulness becomes sharper, so much so your sensitivity, your vigilance, your diligence increases. So the instructions are based to see from the already arisen touch to go to the base. And so much so your striving, your persistent application of the mind, the energy, keep on, you have to practice. That is why it cannot be an overnight kind of a job. It cannot be just by listening to one single talk. It's a long story. It is called Patipada. Patipada means this drama is with a lot of episodes. And it is going forward, backward, and that is how it is going. So Patipada only possible for people with patience. If you are rushing for quick answers, or immediate answers, shortcuts, the shortcut is little longer than the normal cut. This is what the technology learning now. Whatever the shortcut you are going to have it, of course, you may gain some kind of a discovery, but it is little bit more longer than the normal cut. So therefore, patient doing a good job here. So this patience is not there for the beginners yogis. They are impatient. They want to have quick results. But if you keep on practicing repetitive application only, first you have to understand the root cause. And even though it is written in the book, even though you have a faith upon that, even though you have deduced in your deductive knowledge, even your teacher is telling, no avail, unless otherwise you touch the rock bottom. And then only one day you can understand, your very understanding, your very first-hand experience on this breath is applicable just like a holographic understanding. Whole world is nothing but starting with very subtle way, and this come up to this, the gross area, just like the tip of the iceberg, and you are talking only the tip of the iceberg. That is what you call worldly knowledge. But imagine the person with this vigilance and the diligence, not negligent, see the arising part. That does not indicate you have to go and see the arising part of the whole universe. From morning to evening, each and every object, you have to isolate whatever may be convenient and prominent and conspicuous object and apply again and again and again and again. And the day you understand that particular object, that explains what is happening right now. So this is the characteristic feature of the sankhara, the arising part, the object which is having the arising, the middle and the end. So this all is a characteristic feature of the sankhara or the phenomena on the earth. So you take the breath as your example and be thorough. Another person can take the rising and falling of the abdomen as object of meditation, is exactly the same. So at the beginning, of course, they are two different things. If you take the respiratory tract, the person who is so-called anapanasati bhavana or breath meditation, they take the uppermost tip of the tract as the object of meditation, at the end of the nostril or top of your upper lip. But if you are looking at the rising and falling, you see the lowermost part of your abdomen, respiratory tract, the diaphragm movements. But both of them are animated by air element. So you are studying the air element. So whenever you focus the attention to the abdominal movement or diaphragm, it's called Maha meditation system. And whenever you are focusing the on the in-breath and out-breath at the nostril, it's called Anapanasati Bhavana. Whatever the name you are going to give, you have to start somewhere. That starting point must be a natural one, conspicuous one by itself, and it must be a neutral one. It must be a verifiable one. It must be a under your very nose kind of object. These are the characteristics of the insight meditation. When compared to that, you can meditate upon a concept or mind meditating. Often samatha bhavana, the concentration meditation take that kind of a concept. That's also possible for you to have kind of a one-pointedness, concentration. But in the insight meditation, at the beginning you use that particular neutral object, that particular under the nose object, or that particular conspicuous object, just to gain certain amount of concentration. But this penetrating capacity is there. You are not loving and bowing and respect the object, you cut through, you analyze it, you penetrate through. So when you are penetrating, it must be a repetitive one. It must be under your very nose kind of object. So therefore the very first monkey says, understanding two ends means understanding the touching sensation and understanding the beginning of the touch. And then the endowment is, with your sharpness of the mind, whenever you see the arising part of the in-breath, for example, and if you manage to continue your attention, continue your mindfulness, continue the touch of the breath, and it becomes surmounted. And then the disappearance part is an endowment, it's a gift of your sharpness. But you must be appreciating it. You must go prepared for that. That's a secret there. Otherwise, you will be engrossed with the next coming object, so that you will not wait to see the disappearance part of the object you have already traced. That's how so much of bombarding objects in our day-to-day time coming, so that we have no patience to see any single object to its tail end. So therefore, whenever mind is ready, whenever mindfulness is sharp enough, whenever your object is going to show the beginning, the middle and the end, not that you do not know, you are not exposed to it, not that it is hidden, you are obsessed with seeing the next appearing object rather than that disappearing part. So that is the point you miss the bus. And some psychologically they say, the disappearance part, the relieving part, the tapering off part is kind of it's a leading to freedom. We have fear of freedom. We are so happy about the bombarding new things happening. So this is how, according to that theory, of course, we are born enlightened. We don't know, because we are again and again waiting what is happening next. So we are obsessed with. So here what you do is, you isolate, you delimit one particular object, one particular phenomena, and wait to see the disappearance part. When it is happening, it is just mere appreciation or preparedness. So I find in the teaching of the Buddha, as well as the Sir Baden-Powell teaching the Scouting and Girl Guides, they also tell him, be prepared. This is the first instruction, is be prepared. So this is the point, the diligence, the vigilance, and kind of a maturity or philosophical application or religious nature, that preparedness, or how many days it will take for one to have this preparedness for the phenomena, to the breath. It's unpredictable. Next question is, if somehow the other one person is skillful, if somehow the other one person learn it, the importance of the preparedness, and go to see the tail end of it, can that knowledge be erased from his memory capacity, from his consciousness? And when Venerable Dhammika was teaching me, I am sure he did not go into that much detail, but he told, it is difficult, it is painfully difficult, slow, this mindfulness, but once it sets in, it will never be erased off from your memory, from your stream of consciousness. So, when Jnanaponika starting the book, Power of Mindfulness, he says, mindfulness is not a very arrogant and one-upmanship kind of a character in a drama. So therefore it never fight for the leadership. It's yet another kind of a mental concomitant or a thought. Instead, the faith is very arrogant. Always try to take the leadership. And the energy is very arrogant. Always aggressive. And the concentration, everyone get addicted. Everyone is happy to have the concentration. And people are unanimously support the wisdom. So therefore religious people are often misdirected, if I am using this term, sorry, misdirected by the faith, energy, concentration and the wisdom. Therefore each time you neglect about the mindfulness. And he says, a great person like Buddha has to arise in aeons of time, and he says, hey darling, even though it is not so prominent and asking for the leadership and kind of thing, what about giving a chance? What about giving him a leadership? Instead of these very colorful and arrogant kind of characters, and give a chance and see what is going to happen. And we people are like that. We are ready to give at least equal chance for the mindfulness. And then whenever Jnanaponika is, it's a very hilariously he mentioned, once you given the chair to the mindfulness will never get down from the chair. It's the biggest addiction on the earth. The biggest addiction on the earth. That is why I am coming from halfway around the world just to sell my drug. Give each and everyone, just take one pill, one dose of this thing, and you will be addicted up to the point you are always on the way back home. You are now on the way back home to Nibbana. At the beginning it is painfully slow. That's why Venerable Sariputta is telling, it must be thoroughly penetrating, and you must be parinyaya. Go deep, 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 deep. And when it's going there, they see the beginning, the middle and the end of the object, and persistent continuity of the object, and see, be prepared for this changing nature or the impermanent notion. These are very hilarious, rejuvenating kind of mental attitudes. So they must be surrounded by, and then you can see mindfulness take least frictional path. Mindfulness lead always to the comfort zone with respect to the tension, frustration, and day-to-day so much of work and responsibilities and all the kind of thing. But whatever the multitasking way of living, the day you understand the beginning, the middle and the end of one single object, that make a personal, permanent kind of a change, and it create kind of an epidemic. You feel like sharing with others. You feel like sharing it with the dear and near one, and it is not belongs to that particular person. Those are the law of the nature. So that is how from the Buddha onward, Venerable Sariputta onward, Venerable Sister Dhammadina and Visakha onward, and Tissamitteyo onward, it is leading further and further. So the day you understand these two extremes, then you see the Passa Nirodha, the disappearance part of that particular touch. And more you go there, it's just a mere appreciation of the same. The arisen sun is now setting. You're waiting to see how slowly it is descending and disappearance. Like when it is happening, you know the beginning, the middle and the end. And the whole story regarding the fourth noble truth is with that, the disappearance part, way back home. For that you must understand each and every object arising has its own natural part, that is, it is disappearing by itself. So that is the secret, that's the point we have lost it. And what the tanha, what the sibbani, what the seamstress is doing, without allowing us to see the end of it, it binding the beginning and the middle and make the total story. Whenever there is a gap, start fantasizing, daydreaming, mental proliferation, fabrication. And verily the Buddha used the seamstress and stitching each other, two parts, missing the third, and make the story. And that is how it becomes partial knowledge with compared to the penetrating knowledge. So therefore partial knowledge is not bad. It is good as a starting point. And from there you have to go deep and deep into that. And the day you see, not only the beginning, not on the middle, but to the end, you must understand how much all the mental qualities you must have. And it is when and where all the qualities, all the alignments come alone, the penetration can happen, the power transmission can happen. Don't think it must happen for each and every object, each and every thought moment. Once that is installed in your stream of consciousness, ultimately it is going to give benefits in time to come. And whatever the pictures people are going to draw, whatever the story they are going to say, whatever the distraction you are going to get, you will never rush to a decision. You will keep on observing. More and more feasibility study, that means more and more observation and less decisions. Because when and where you are rushing for a decision, that means so much of lack of understanding, lack of enough information, not enough feasibility study. So therefore, more and more you do, you find your communication, it may be short to the point, sharp and short, sharp and sweet. Otherwise, endless talking. So this is how it happens. So therefore, when you go further and further, you may find a lot of easy ways and means, not only to see the beginning, the middle and the end of the object, the world situation. For this environmental pollution, for this heating of the globe, for this unjust, for this lack of peace. So you are the person. Here is the time. Here is the place. Now is the time. And if you are going to reach others with the missing here now I am, that you miss the bus. And each one of us can start. Each thought moment we are living with here now I am is a contribution to the peace of the world. Each and every moment you try to be here and now is answering this pollution, mental and physical, outside and inside. So therefore don't underestimate it. Even it may be a split second, it is contributing because that split second makes the story. Ultimately it is gathering the momentum. So therefore hope this kind of a penetration help each and every one of us to be confident and contented with this mindfulness and continue, and we take the feeling as subject and we can continue further. More and more you go there internally, and under the nose you may feel lack of tension and the frustration, as well as contribute to the world at large. So with that remark I would like to sum up the talk today. Thank you very much for listening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.